On my birthday, my husband gathered everyone to announce that he was leaving me for my best friend. As everyone laughed and toasted to their new love, I stood in silence and said, "You'll regret this." 6 weeks later, he is sobbing at my door, broken and begging. 34F. Never imagined my 34th birthday would become the day my entire world shattered and then rebuilt itself into something far more powerful than before. The morning started like any other birthday in recent years. My husband of 8 years seemed unusually cheerful, bustling around the kitchen making what he claimed was a special breakfast. I should have known something was wrong when he kept checking his phone and grinning at messages. When I asked who was texting him so early, he brushed it off, saying it was just work stuff. My best friend since college called around 10, her voice unusually bright and excited. She insisted on coming over early to help set up for the evening party my husband had planned. I thought it was sweet how involved she wanted to be, how she kept asking specific questions about the guest list and timing. Looking back, every red flag was there, waving frantically in my face. The afternoon flew by in a blur of decorating and food preparation. She arrived with an expensive bottle of champagne, claiming it was for a special toast later. Her behavior seemed off. She kept avoiding eye contact and would burst into nervous laughter at random moments. When I asked if everything was okay, she assured me she was just excited about the surprise they had planned. By 7, our living room was packed with friends, family, and colleagues. Everyone seemed unusually animated, like they were all in on some elaborate joke. My sister kept giving me these pitying looks that made my stomach churn. My mother-in-law, who normally barely tolerated me, was being overly sweet and kept patting my arm sympathetically. Around 8:30, my husband called for everyone's attention. He stood in the center of the room, holding that expensive champagne bottle, his face glowing with what I initially mistook for love and excitement. He began by thanking everyone for coming to celebrate such a special day, but then his tone shifted. He announced that while today was indeed special, it wasn't just because of my birthday. He had something important to share with everyone who mattered to us. My heart started racing as I watched him reach for my best friend's hand, pulling her to stand beside him. The room fell silent as he declared that he and she had fallen deeply in love over the past several months. He explained how they had tried to fight their feelings out of respect for me, but their connection was too strong to deny. He said they wanted to be honest with everyone about their relationship and their plans to build a future together. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then, slowly, people began to react. Some gasped, others whispered among themselves, but what shocked me most was when several people actually started clapping. My own brother raised his glass and said something about following your heart. My best friend's sister laughed and said she had seen this coming for months. As more people joined in with congratulations and toasts to their newfound love, I stood frozen in the middle of my own living room, watching my life implode while everyone celebrated. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, not just from my husband and best friend, but from all these people who seemed genuinely happy about this devastating revelation. My husband looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for my blessing or some gracious response. When I remained silent, he actually had the audacity to ask if I was okay with everything, saying he hoped we could all be mature about the situation. That's when something inside me snapped. I looked around the room at all these people I had cooked for, hosted, supported through their own crises, and realized they were all complicit in this humiliation. I walked to the center of the room, looked directly at my husband and former best friend, and spoke the only words that came to mind. I told them they would regret this decision more than they could possibly imagine. The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. Someone made a joke about scorned women and dramatic threats. My husband actually rolled his eyes and told everyone not to worry about me being dramatic. My former best friend giggled and said something about how I would understand eventually when I found real love myself. I didn't say another word. I walked upstairs, packed a bag, and left my own birthday party. I could hear the celebration continuing downstairs as I loaded my car, their laughter echoing through the windows like a soundtrack to my humiliation. Update 1. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. While they had been planning their grand revelation, I had been unconsciously preparing for this moment in ways I didn't even realize. 3 months earlier, I had started documenting some concerning financial discrepancies I noticed in our joint accounts. My husband had been unusually secretive about money, claiming he was planning surprise investments for our future. I had screenshots of transfers, unexplained expenses, and credit card charges that painted a very different picture. I also remembered the business partnership documents I had helped him prepare 6 months ago. In my naivety, I had co-signed several agreements and loans, thinking I was supporting his entrepreneurial dreams. What I hadn't realized was how much liability I had unknowingly assumed, and more importantly, how much leverage those documents gave me. My first call was to a divorce attorney my sister had recommended after her own messy separation. The consultation revealed that my husband's timing couldn't have been worse for him. The business he had started with my financial backing was just beginning to show serious profit, and his decision to publicly announce his affair had eliminated any chance of claiming the marriage had ended amicably. The attorney explained that my husband's public humiliation of me, combined with the evidence of financial deception I had gathered, created a perfect storm for what she called a very favorable settlement. She seemed almost excited about the case, mentioning that she rarely saw such clear-cut examples of marital misconduct combined with financial impropriety. While I was meeting with lawyers, my husband and former best friend were apparently moving fast with their new relationship. Mutual friends reported that they had already started looking at apartments together and were talking about a quick engagement. She had even started posting cryptic social media updates about new beginnings and following your heart. Update 2. 2 weeks after my birthday disaster, the legal proceedings began in earnest. My attorney had advised me to remain completely silent about my plans, letting my husband believe I was simply processing the shock of his announcement. This strategy worked perfectly. He grew increasingly confident and careless. He started making demands about dividing our assets, assuming I would be reasonable and cooperative. He even suggested we could handle everything without lawyers to keep things simple and friendly. When I didn't immediately agree, he became frustrated and started making subtle threats about making things difficult if I didn't cooperate. What he didn't know was that my attorney had already filed preliminary motions to freeze our joint assets and had begun the process of forensic accounting on our finances. The investigation revealed a pattern of financial deception that went back almost 2 years, long before his affair with my best friend had supposedly begun. The business he had started with my money and credit was worth significantly more than he had led me to believe. He had been systematically hiding profits and minimizing the company's value in our discussions about finances. Even worse, several major contracts he had signed were technically in both our names due to the partnership agreements I had co-signed. My former best friend, meanwhile, was apparently growing impatient with the pace of their relationship progress. Friends reported that she was pressuring him to finalize our divorce quickly so they could get engaged. She had started planning their future with an enthusiasm that bordered on manic, talking about wedding venues and honeymoon destinations. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was pushing him toward the very legal proceedings that would ultimately destroy him financially. Update 3. By week 4, my husband's confidence was beginning to crack. The forensic accountant had uncovered enough evidence of financial misconduct to support claims of fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. My attorney explained that his systematic deception about our marital assets could result in him forfeiting his claim to significant portions of our shared wealth. More damaging was the discovery that he had been using our joint credit and my co-signed agreements to fund not just his business, but also his affair. Restaurant receipts, hotel charges, and even jewelry purchases for my former best friend had all been paid for with marital assets. My attorney called it a textbook case of dissipation of marital property. The business partnership documents I had signed turned out to be my ace in the hole. Because I was technically a co-owner of his company, I had legal rights to half of everything, including the major contracts he had been so proud of securing. My attorney filed motions to assert my ownership rights, effectively freezing his ability to make any major business decisions without my consent. My former best friend was apparently becoming increasingly anxious about the legal complications. She had expected a quick, clean divorce followed by a fairy tale romance. Instead, she found herself dating a man who was facing potential financial ruin and couldn't even access his own business accounts without court approval. Friends reported that their relationship was becoming strained. She was frustrated by his constant stress and legal meetings, while he was beginning to realize the full scope of what his impulsive announcement had cost him. The passionate romance that had seemed worth destroying 2 marriages for was crumbling under the weight of real-world consequences. Update 4. Week 5 brought the breakthrough I had been waiting for. My husband's attorney had finally reviewed all the evidence my legal team had compiled, and the reality of his situation became undeniable. He was facing the loss of at least 60% of his business, significant alimony payments, and potential criminal charges for financial fraud. His attempts to negotiate became increasingly desperate. He offered to give me the house, then the house plus his car, then practically everything except his business. My attorney advised patience. His panic was making him reveal just how much he had been hiding about our true financial situation. The final straw came when my former best friend discovered the extent of his financial problems. She had apparently been planning to quit her job once they got married, expecting to live off his business success. When she learned that his company might be partially liquidated to satisfy the divorce settlement and that he could be facing years of debt payments, her enthusiasm for their grand romance evaporated overnight. Friends reported a massive fight between them, with her accusing him of lying about his financial situation and him blaming her for pressuring him into the public announcement that had made everything worse. She apparently told him she needed time to think about their relationship, which everyone understood meant she was looking for an exit strategy. Update 5. 6 weeks after my birthday, I was reviewing settlement documents when my doorbell rang at nearly midnight. Through the peephole, I saw my husband standing on my porch, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and even through the door I could see he had been crying. He begged me to let him in, saying he needed to talk to me urgently. His voice was broken, desperate in a way I had never heard before. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. The man standing before me was a shadow of the confident person who had humiliated me 6 weeks earlier. He immediately broke down, sobbing as he told me how sorry he was for everything. He said he had made the biggest mistake of his life and that he would do anything to fix it. Through his tears, he explained that my former best friend had ended their relationship 3 days earlier. She had told him she couldn't handle the stress and uncertainty of his legal problems, and that she had realized she wasn't ready for such a complicated situation. She was apparently already dating someone new, a mutual friend from our old circle who had a stable job and no messy divorce proceedings. He begged me to call off the lawyers and give him another chance. He promised he would sign over the business, the house, everything, if I would just consider reconciliation. He said he realized now that what he had felt for her wasn't real love, just infatuation, and that he had destroyed the only relationship that truly mattered. I listened to his pleas with a calmness that surprised even me. When he finished, I told him I appreciated his apology, but that some decisions couldn't be undone. I explained that his public humiliation of me had revealed something about his character that I could never unsee or forgive. He continued to sob, asking what he could do to prove he had changed. I told him the truth, that he could start by taking responsibility for his choices instead of only feeling sorry now that they had consequences. I reminded him that he hadn't just betrayed me privately, he had orchestrated a public spectacle of my humiliation while people I trusted laughed and celebrated. As I closed the door on his pleas, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete peace with my decision. The revenge I had promised wasn't something I had actively pursued, it was simply the natural consequence of his own actions coming full circle. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. I received the house, 65% of the business, and substantial monthly support payments. My former husband had to declare bankruptcy and move back in with his parents. My former best friend had moved to another city with her new boyfriend, apparently eager to escape the drama she had helped create. Looking back, I realized that my quiet promise of regret hadn't been a threat, it had been a prediction. I had simply recognized, in that moment of ultimate betrayal, The people who could orchestrate such cruelty would inevitably face the consequences of their own character flaws. The most satisfying part wasn't the financial settlement or watching their relationship crumble. It was the realization that I had discovered my own strength in the worst possible circumstances. The woman who had stood silently in that room while everyone laughed was gone, replaced by someone who understood her own worth and wouldn't accept anything less than she deserved. Sometimes the best revenge is simply stepping aside and letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. My husband and former best friend had destroyed their own lives far more effectively than I ever could have. All I had to do was refuse to save them from themselves.